Getting your private pilot's license is an awesome thing, and I would really recommend it. If you research online and you go to websites of flight schools, you may find estimates of what it may cost you. In this video, I will share with you what it cost me to get my private pilot's license, pretty much from the beginning to the end of my training, including all the equipment that I needed to buy, so that you get a good idea about what to expect. So if you want to find out what it really costs, stick around. Before we get started, here are two things to keep in mind. My numbers are my numbers. They are variable for different people depending on how much it costs you to rent a plane, how much a CFI costs, and how much time you're going to take to do your private pilot's license. So as we're going along, I'm going to put the numbers here in the formula that I'm going to use, and you can adjust that formula if you think your numbers are going to be a little bit different. The second thing to remember, which I think is incredibly important, is your motivation.
Somebody stop me!
Paying for a private pilot's license isn't cheap, so if you're motivated or you have an experience that motivated you to do it, that will definitely help you get through much quicker and much smoother. In my case, I had a flight that I was on from Dallas to Paris on board a Dreamliner, which is my favorite plane, and I was sitting in my seat just studying my materials for my check ride. The flight attendant noticed that I'm reading aviation-related materials and asked me whether I would want to go to the flight deck and meet the flight crew, and of course I said yes, because who would say no to that? I got to meet the captain and the two first officers, and they're so nice, it was incredible. They let me sit in the first officer's chair for a good 5 minutes while the captain was doing his pre-flight checks. We got to talk a little bit about my flight training. I asked them a lot of questions. They gave me really good advice. We had a couple of good laughs. All in all, it was a super motivational experience, and I really recommend that the next time you step on a plane, you ask the flight attendant whether you can meet the flight crew. It will be a really good source of motivation for you. So the first number that we're going to look over is quite simple. If you join a flight school or a club, there is going to be a membership fee associated with that. My flight school here in Annapolis, Maryland charges $200 every year for the membership. The biggest line item in your budget would be your airplane rental costs. I flew a Cessna 172, which costs $145 an hour. If you remember, I mentioned that every student takes a different amount of time to get through their training. In my case, I did it in 104 hours, and the reason why that is way more than what the FAA mandates is because I wanted to be really proficient in all the airplane systems and how to fly it so that I can pass my check ride on the first try and feel safe flying it by myself once I got my private pilot's license. Next would be your flight instructor costs. My flight instructor cost me $35 per hour. As you can see, the total amount of hours that I spent with my flight instructor is greater than the total amount of hours that I spent in the plane. And the reason for that is the briefing before the flights, the debriefing after the flights, and ground schooling that you will also need to do with your instructor.
Will you please open your textbooks to Chapter 8 and we'll get started?
You now need to buy a bunch of equipment. And the first most important thing you will need to buy is a headset. In my case, I went for the Bose A20 noise cancelling headset. It's a wonderful product and it's not cheap, but as you will find out, most good headsets aren't. If you're doing Part 141 like I did, you will have to go through a syllabus and an online ground school. In my case, I used the Jeppesen Ground School, which was super informative and really good. And if this is the first time you're learning about aviation and planes, you really want to go through the course. They explain everything from weather to charts to everything that you really need to know before you get into the plane. If you go with Jeppesen, they have a very nice bundle for $300 that gives you a flight computer, a logbook, and the courses. And I really recommend that you do that. You will want to buy yourself a POH, which is a pilot operating handbook for the specific plane that you are going to train in. The reason why that is important is when you go for your check ride, the examiner is going to ask you all sorts of questions about the plane and the systems, and the best place to find all that information is in the POH. The next couple of items that are very important for you to have are an aviation flashlight, and specifically look for an aviation flashlight that has both red and white lighting. As you go through your training, you will understand why that is important. Those are not very expensive and you can find them on Amazon. The next device you need to buy are Foggles. Foggles are fancy glasses that allow you to only see what's inside the plane and you won't be able to see outside. And the reason why that is important is even though you're not training to be an instrument-rated pilot just yet, they want to see that you can actually fly the plane if you had an emergency without being able to see anything outside. So the Foggles are important in your training and you will need to get those as well. The next few items that you will see listed here are some books and charts, and the chart supplement book that you will need to buy when you train. I did everything based on paper charts, and I'm pretty sure your examiner will want to see that you can use the paper charts and know how to get through the chart supplement. The next piece of equipment is somewhat optional for your private pilot's license because you're going to use mostly paper charts. However, I bought it and started using it while I was training because it is very useful, and that is an iPad. I bought the iPad Pro that has both the cellular and the Wi-Fi antennas in it, and the reason for that is because when you buy the cellular model, the iPad comes with a GPS chip, and as you fly, it can still track you. The Wi-Fi model doesn't do that. After you get the iPad, you would want to install a very important app on it called ForeFlight. What ForeFlight really is an app that takes all your charts, your chart supplements, your weight and balance calculations, and your logbook and puts it all in one place. Of course, remember that you will still need to use your paper charts for your private pilot's check ride. However, having ForeFlight with you, especially if you're going to continue on for your instrument rating and commercial rating and maybe be a CFI, is actually very useful. So now you have accumulated a lot of stuff. You have a headset, you have an iPad, you have your books, you have your logbook, your Foggles, your flashlights, all the stuff that you need for your flight training, but you need a place to put it in. So you will buy yourself a flight bag, and there is a huge selection out there. This is what I paid for mine.
Are you physically going to take my bag and put it beneath the plane? Are you going to go right now outside with the guys with the earmuffs and go put it in there?
Now we're really getting close to our check ride, and before we can go there, we need to take our FAA Written Exam. The exam pretty much tests you on everything that you've learned so far, primarily from your ground school. The exam has 60 multiple choice questions, and you need at least 70% to get through the exam.
Computer said I failed that test. The computer made an error. I recommend this time I pass.
Making sure you get a very high test score on your written is important. The reason for that is when you go for your FAA Check Ride, a portion of the check ride is your oral test. Your oral test will have any of the questions that you may have missed in your written in it. So the way to get prepared for your written is by downloading any number of apps that have the entire database of questions that you can just go through and memorize. The database consists of about 1,000 questions. So after getting all the equipment and putting in the time studying and flying a lot, you're ready for your check ride. You will then go to your DPE and he will give you your oral and your practical exam. In my case, the DPE costs were $550, which is considered low in my area. So now that we've covered everything in detail, here is the complete cost breakdown. As you can see, this is not going to be the cheapest thing in the world. However, you got into this because you're passionate about it and you're motivated. Amongst all the other ratings that you may want to get, the private pilot's license will be the most expensive one. If you want to go on to do your instrument or your commercial single or multi, or even like me, your CFI ratings, you will end up paying much less. And the reason for that is because you already know how to fly the plane and you just need to add the ratings on it, and that usually takes a little bit less time, which means it's going to be cheaper. And you already have all your equipment that you bought for your private pilot's license.
Surely there must be something you can do.
I'm doing everything I can. And stop calling me Shirley.
I really hope you enjoyed this video and that it helped you to understand a little bit more about the costs associated with the private pilot's licensing. If you liked the video, please click the like button. If you have a question or a comment, please leave it in the comment section below. As always, support the channel by subscribing and clicking the notification button so that you can be alerted when the next video comes out. Until then, I'll see you up there.